Okay, so let's talk about the present perfect. Um, what we'll do is first we'll talk about the problems with the normal ways of thinking about the perfect. I want to try to convince you that the ideas that you probably have about the perfect are not the best ones, and you'll probably want to just forget those. They do more harm than they do good, and I'll try to show you why. After that, I'll tell you what I think the right way to understand the perfect is, and I'll show you why I think so in some examples. And then we'll go through just a few problems to see how this rule really works for basically all cases. All cases when the question is, should I use the present perfect or should I use the past simple, which is will typically be the question. So start with the problems with usual ways of thinking about the perfect. So when we think about tenses, what are we doing? We're looking for basically for rules, for principles, for ideas that we can refer to that will guide us to the right answer. We want to do this and do this enough that the right way of saying things becomes natural to us. So this can't happen automatically. We need some kind of guidance to bring us there. So the rule guides us. We use the rule enough, and after some time it becomes more and more natural. We don't have to think about the rule as much, but we maybe still want to have it there in your mind, or you want to have that understanding become more and more natural to you. So what 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 should you look for in a rule? What makes a rule a good rule? So I think that a good rule is made up of a couple of main things when you're talking about rules for language. The first is it should be pretty easy to understand and use. It should be intuitive. You should be able to remember it easily, and you should be able to apply it easily to different situations. The other thing that's needed is it's got to work. Okay, it can't be like, oh, sometimes this works, or most of the time this works. You want to be very precise when you speak a language. You want to be, you don't want to be making a lot of mistakes. And so if you have rules, which is what people are taught most of the time, this is what you find in most books, which I'll show you in a second. You'll have a rule that, yeah, that's true. Sometimes that's true, but but a lot of times not. Okay, so that's not really a rule. If you compare with natural sciences, okay, um, I don't know, physics, for example, chemistry, this kind of biology, this kind of thing. You might have like a hypothesis, right? I think that maybe this is the rule, this is true, this is the principle. Okay, you do an experiment. One time that doesn't work, one single time that doesn't work, well, you have to throw away that rule. It's gone, it's no good. Because if it's really a rule, in natural science, if it's really a rule in natural science, that will work 100% of the time. Now, language is a little bit different because we make the rules ourselves. So you can there's a little bit more flexibility. There can be exceptions to main rules. But for the most part, in my experience, in my yeah, what I've seen is that there are pretty solid rules that work pretty much, like 99.7 to 9% of the time, and with very few exceptions. And these are the ones that you should be looking for. This is what I think I can give you with this model. So again, you don't want 70, 90% of the time working. It's not good enough. You want very high reliability. So if you can get both of these things together, easy to understand and use, and very precise, works really very, very high percentage of the time, then you've got a good model. Okay, so let's see how the normal ways that you've probably thought about these things don't meet those criteria, aren't so easy to understand and use, and don't work so much at the time. So, I mean, I'm mostly going to talk to you about this, how these ones don't work, but to talk about this first part of it, the rules that you use with or that you're given with the perfect, it's just too complicated. So you're given you're given like, for this kind of situation, use the perfect. For that kind of situation, use the perfect. When you have this keyword, use the perfect. When you have this other keyword, use the perfect. It's too many things to remember. When you combine there being so many things to remember, it not working such a high percentage of the time, and then so you have to remember other things, maybe you have to remember specific situations, it just becomes way too complicated. So the things are kind of interrelated, but let's look at the meaning that this is actually like the best. I mean, it's not as good as it should be, but this is the best answer that I usually get. What people will say is, okay, it just happened, and we'll look at this with this word "just" here. Just happened, or there's a result. Okay, so it's true that you need a result, but you also need something else. So this is really like an incomplete definition. We're gonna need a result, and we're gonna need something else also. So let's look at a couple of cases. So the weather has changed. Okay, we've got and this is okay. This is a good. This is a fine sentence. This case, we have a result, and we use the perfect. So far so good. But in this sentence, we should not use the perfect. Okay, I had a big dinner yesterday, so I'm not hungry. So I'm not hungry for breakfast. So let's put not hungry now for breakfast to make this clearer. We would not use the perfect here. Okay, so we do really clearly have a result here. I think I can give you a better example of this. All right, we definitely would not use the perfect in this situation. There's a result. There's definitely a result. They lost the match. They're not the winner. Okay, but they're not the winner for that game, or maybe that season, or whatever. There's definitely a very clear result here, but it would not make sense to use the perfect in this case. So with examples like this, and we can find plenty of others, we can see that having a result is not good enough. At least it doesn't allow you to clearly divide the cases when you should use the perfect and when you shouldn't. There's no clear difference from this definition when you should use it and when you shouldn't. Okay, so how do they try to correct this? How do they try to make this a better definition? Most of the time, if you look in most books, or if you talk to a lot of teachers, what they'll say is, okay, well, it's got to be a result, but it's also got to be important enough result. An important enough result. And it's getting closer to the truth, but this is still not good enough, because it's very, very difficult to make that division between the thing that between when it's a good enough result and when it's not a good enough result. All right, so you're also told about keywords just already yet. So the problem with these is the general problem that we've talked about or that can be with models or rules, and that is that it's just not consistent. Okay, so it work sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. So in this example, we'll see later why, for all these things, we'll see later why why it's correct to use the perfect in these cases. All right. So this example, the pizza is just finished cooking, so now we can eat it. Okay, so this is okay. This is good. And we use the word just here. This is the point. Okay, well, we use the word just here too. And we shouldn't use the perfect in that case. Okay, so you have a rule that isn't really a rule. A lot of the time doesn't work. That's not a good rule. Okay, next. I've already seen that movie. We're already here. That's good. Okay, I already went there last month. That is not good. Okay, so the game is already over. In the case, you would not use the perfect in these cases. Okay, now yet, this is actually pretty solid. Okay, you can use anytime you use yet, you probably should use the perfect. There's an old use of the word yet that means something else, but you probably won't use it that way. You probably won't hear it used that way. The way that yet is normally used, you should probably use the perfect with that. I mean, you can take that as a rule. It's better if you understand the general rule, what the real rule is, and then you understand why you need to use the perfect if you have that word. Okay, so let's look at what the general rule is. Okay, so like I said, result is just part of it. You need a result and you need something else. So what do you need? So what you need is actually a developing result. So what does that mean? What does developing mean? Developing means equals, that means it's still changing, evolving, growing, shrinking, increasing, decreasing, etc. You get the idea, right? You could think of some other words that are like this, but basically it's still in flux. In flux, it's still changing, in other words, okay? So how can we see that this is really true? We can look at some examples like this. So here we've got a couple of sentences. We should, well, in this one we're picking the right one. So what should we say? Shakespeare wrote or has written about 40 plays. Well, we should say that he wrote about 40 plays. Now, here we have a result, don't we? We very clearly, obviously have a result. We've got 40 plays. Right? These are famous plays. For hundreds of years, these have been famous plays. I would say that's a result, isn't it? But you see, result is not enough. We use the past simple here. So the reason is because this is that we use the past simple instead of the present perfect. Is this is not developing anymore. It's over. He's dead, right? He's dead. He's not going to write any more plays. That it's not exactly 40, but whatever the number is exactly, that's not going to increase anymore. So we don't have a developing result. We have to use the past simple. If we talk about Stephen King, at least when I'm making this video, I think he's pretty old by now, but I think he's still writing books. We should say he has written because he's still alive and he's still writing books. And this 50 number, or whatever the number is exactly, that can still change, that can still increase. So you see, we have, here we have results, but not developing. And here we have result and developing. Okay, so we need, so in that case, we should use the perfect. All right, let's look at another case. One time that we'll see in a second why we should use the perfect to talk about things that we've done in our lives, such as where we've traveled. And normally when we talk about where we've traveled or where we haven't traveled, we'll use the perfect. like in this case. I have never been to Japan. But, let's write this here. Imagine you're very, very old, you're 99 years old, and you can hardly see, you can hardly walk, you almost never go out of the house. You're definitely not going to take a trip to Japan in that case. And you're telling, and you're talking to somebody about it, and this is real life. Old people in English, at the end of their lives, if they talk about things that they've done or things that they have, or especially things that they haven't done, they're going to use the past simple, because these are things that they're not going to do, and intuitively, indirectly, somehow we understand the real meaning of this. If you ask somebody, they won't be able to tell you, but deep in our minds, we understand the meaning really is that of the perfect is we have developing results. So when we're very old, we're not going to use the perfect in this case. It's just, it wouldn't make sense to us, it wouldn't make sense to somebody else, or it would sound like pathetic, or like delusional, like you're not going to Japan, you know, sorry, it's kind of late for those kinds of things for you. So that's another example. So here's with Atlantis, this famous mythical or historical, perhaps, city that was destroyed by, I don't know, it was just fell into the sea, I guess, right? So imagine there's a city nearby, and before the flood, deluge, before it was consumed in the sea, people would say, I've never been to Atlantis. But after it sinks into the sea, it would not be logical to say, I've never been to Atlantis, because this is not a developing situation anymore. You can't go there. You can't go there because it's gone. All right? That's why here, not developing, can't go there, it's gone. Here, you can still go. It's waiting for you. Just don't go at the wrong time. Unless you've got a helicopter, maybe. All right. So, how do we apply this? Okay. How do we? What are all the cases? Next question is, what are all the cases that we see this principle working? And what is this principle again? Developing result. Okay, so what are these cases? So really, the simplest one is just ongoing counts. She has studied English for 8 years. Okay, so we have a result still developing. She's still studying English. We know that from the tense that we use here. And so what's the result it's developing? It's the count of the amount of time that something has happened. By the way, it's not the verb. Okay, this is an important point. It's not the verb. Let's make this point here. It's not the verb that's developing or that's still happening. If we use the perfect continuous, it will be, and you can see a different video for that. But in the case of the perfect alone, it's not the verb that's still happening, it's the result that is still kind of happening, developing. If you see a similarity between developing and happening. So here's our result that is still developing. It will be 8 years in 1 day. If it was exactly 8 years, it'll be 8 years in 1 day. If we look at a counterexample, she studied medicine for 8 years before she started practicing. Okay, here's past simple, because that whole thing is finished, not developing anymore. That whole 8 years of studying medicine is finished. Okay, we've talked for 60 minutes. So if we say so far, if we say we talked for 60 minutes yesterday, then that's past simple, because that's not developing anymore, it's over. He's read 3 books this month. Counterexample. He read 3 books last month. So he's pretty consistent. So this one, we're still in the month. This number of books is still developing. Here's our result. Count number of books read. Our result there was count number of minutes. And this one is not developing anymore. Look, we have a result, okay? It's not a good definition. This is a result. Like, I don't know, maybe he's got like some kind of place where he writes the number of books, and this is his results for the year or something like that. It's very easy to think about that as a result. And yet, we do not want to use the perfect for this case, because we're talking about a result that is not developing anymore. The month is over, so the count of books in that month is not developing anymore. Okay, so ongoing counts, that's that one. Next one is what I call kind of like biographical things. So things that you or somebody or something has ever done, experienced. Here are these examples. Places you visited, things you've heard, seen, learned, foods that you've tried, authors that you've read, anything like that. So what is the developing result in cases like this? Well, the developing result is basically just like your whole group of life experiences. So, and maybe it might be your whole life that you're talking about, or it might be like a narrow category that you're kind of thinking about. You can think about it either way. But if you say something like, what I mean by that is if you see something like I have been to Spain, then you're kind of talking about the places that you've traveled. It is like part of your overall portfolio, but you can also like narrow this down, life portfolio, life experiences portfolio, but you can narrow this down to places traveled portfolio. So, and again, you should be young enough if you're going to say this, to compare with our example from before. But normally we would say I've been to Spain, and I've been to Spain, I haven't been to Brazil, or I have been to Sweden, but I haven't been to Denmark, or something like that. Okay. I've never tried Nigerian food. I have ice skated before. Okay. This is just overall. Think about like your CV, or your resume, as we say in the U.S. It's growing, right? As the more you live, the more you work. In the case of a CV or resume, the more it's growing and developing, and you can think about your life in that way also. That's developing and growing and changing, and things either are not there, they could still be there, like Nigerian food. Maybe I'll, after I've made this video, if I see a Nigerian restaurant, I've got to try it, if that ever happens. So that can still change. If it's a negative thing, it's still developing, because it can still change, it can still happen. And if it's a positive thing, then well, this is an item on your list, and the list is still growing. Okay, so the next one is ongoing projects. Now, there's some connection kind of between all of these, but it's good to divide them, I think, in this way. So this is something like this. We've completed parts A and B of project A, B, C. We use the perfect for these kinds of situations. So I've prepared the dough. I put tomato sauce and cheese on top, and I preheated the oven, and now I'm ready to cook the pizza. So what is our overall developing result? Our overall developing result is like a cooked and maybe eaten pizza. And we're not there yet. It's still developing. We made the dough, which is the bread, the uncooked bread. And we put the tomato sauce on top, and we put the cheese on top, and we got the oven hot. We preheated the oven, we got it hot, and now we're ready to cook the pizza. So I hope that's clear. We've got that result, and we're still in the middle of it, so we should use the perfect for that kind of situation. This is another good kind of illustration of this principle, because we can see here that these verbs are finished. Okay, prepare the dough. It's this action is done. We put the tomato and cheese on top. That action is done. Preheated the oven. That action is also done. So the only thing that is still happening here, that is still going, is this result, which is our goal for the whole thing. Okay, let's look at the cases that we had from before and see why we use the perfect in these situations. We should see that we had a result, and also that this result is still developing, or was still developing. So the weather has changed. Okay, so weather always changes. So it changed. It's not going to stay that way after that. It's going to change again. So this is a developing situation. So we have a result here, but it's also a developing result. That's why we use it. I've had a big dinner, so I'm not hungry for breakfast. Well, it's over, right? Yesterday is over, and that situation is over. Now, I changed the example because you could make an argument for the other case there. But let's. Our team has lost the match last week. It's hard to see how that would be a developing situation. So it would sound strange to me for the perfect to be used here. Okay, we have a result, but it's not a developing result. Okay, so that was it. Now we can also look at the these ones. All right, well, look, I also wanted to say it is definitely a lot easier to think about it this way, but it still takes some judgment. Okay, you still have to make the right decision about whether you have a result that is developing or not. Sometimes this is easier, sometimes this is a little bit more difficult, and it takes some thought. But this is the real reason. And so if you can make the right decision about whether something is developing, or you have a result that is developing or not, you'll get the right tense. Okay, let's look at these cases with just, already, and yet again. So we had this example, the pizza just finished cooking and now we can eat. So why was it, why did we want to use the perfect here? Because we've got an overall developing result, which is in this case eating, cooking and eating the pizza. In this case, definitely both. All right, so that's our overall result, and this is still developing. The pizza just finished cooking, but we haven't eaten it yet. And so now we want to put it on the table, cut it in slices, and eat it. And only then will our result be completed. All right, I have already seen that movie. Okay, which one was this like? This is the biographical information. You've seen that movie. and that's part of your portfolio of things that you've done in your life. You can also see another movie. You can also try a different restaurant. You can do a lot of things, and this overall result, which is the things that you've done in your life, or maybe the movies you've seen, if you want to make it narrower, or the recent movies you've seen. Um, that's one way to look at it. Now, another way to look at it, with this same example, you could say, um, I've already seen that movie. So I don't want to go with you. But yeah, I don't know. Forget that. I don't want to confuse them. Right. Keep it like this. Okay. This is a case where you. This is the case. Well, cases like this make people think the important thing is that there is just a result only. But the fact is that this is also a developing result, because the developing result is whether or not you go to the movie with that person. You have a situation where something has to happen. You guys have to go to the movie together or not, or this movie is seen somehow, and in this sequence, you're not going to see the movie. So you can look at this from different perspectives, but all perspectives should come back to this principle that you have a developing result. Okay, try it. You'll see it works basically always. All right. Yeah. I don't know if I said this. Pretty much. Yeah, it always pretty much works. And why? Okay, so we wanted to talk about why. So the reason is that it has to do with the meaning of yet, and yet means that basically that it can still happen. If you say that, you'll use it with negative sentence, basically to say that something hasn't happened, but it can still happen. This is exactly the meaning of the perfect, which is that you have a result, and that result is still developing. If it can still happen, then the situation is still a developing situation, not a finished situation. If you take the travel example, if you can still go to Japan, you haven't gone yet, for example, I haven't gone to Japan yet, well, that means you can still go. If somebody's 99 years old and they haven't gone to Japan yet, then, like I said, it sounds delusional. So this would not be the correct use of the word yet. Or the perfect, and these two will generally just go together. Okay, so result is not enough. Just already yet, keywords like this are not enough. Other kind of situational clues, other information from situations is not really going to consistently give you the right answer. And in a rule, what we want it to be easy to understand and use. We don't want too many details. We don't want too complex an idea. We don't want too many details. We want it to work almost always. And these other ways of thinking about it doesn't work. We can say, what does work? Developing result. Okay, I hope that's clear. And these examples especially should really demonstrate that. And these are the applications that we're going to have of this principle. These are the different kinds of situations where this idea is going to show itself in a little bit kind of different ways, and so we can put them in these categories. Look, you might say, well, these your rules are getting pretty complicated too. No, you still want to think about these things as just developing results. Okay, these are developing results. This is developing result here. This is developing result here. You still want to think developing result, but I think it does help to see the different ways that this developing result different kinds of situations that you see these kinds of developing results, and then after that it's easier to identify them. So let's look at just a few examples and see how this works. So here we want to choose present perfect or past simple. So in the first sentence, the performance, we want to either say, let's write this. I want to say either saw or have seen, or the other way. Okay, so what's the right answer? Is this a developing result? This is a question that we always want to ask. Developing result. What could the developing result possibly be here? Nothing, really. It doesn't make any sense to think there's a developing result. And it's not even clear that we have a result here. Okay, so we definitely don't have a developing result. This is kind of the thought process you want to go through. So perfect would not really fit here, basically, in any circumstance. Just want to be able to think really quickly. Okay, do we have developing results here? Okay, just no result at all. So it's no way it's going to be a developing result. Understanding has improved a lot since you started the new course. Okay, well, I just gave you the answer. The alternative would be improved a lot. So our options here are going to be has improved or improved. So has improved is going to be the right answer. Improved not, because why? Because do we have results? Yes. The result is yes. Developing result is her the change in her understanding. It's gotten better. It's better. Okay, and is this still developing? Well, can her result, can this result change? Can her understanding get even better than that? Yes. Or it could even get worse. Maybe the course starts out good and then gets bad, or she gets lazy or something. Happens, but somehow this is something that is still developing and changing. All right. Next one. So we want either have started or we want started. So same question as always. So we've got a developing result. I've started that job in 2011. Not really, do we? It's just, we're just talking about something we did. I don't see any result here. We basically just don't have any result at all. We have just something that happened, finished happening in some previous time period, which I have here is 2011. There's no way that this fits this idea of a developing result. Okay, it should be negative. So we're going to want to say either has not rained or didn't rain. So this one, we have developing result. This is kind of like the portfolio of the life history, the CV of the weather for the week. So we do And can this still develop and change? Well, I already said developing result. Maybe I should just ask for those results first of all. Okay, the result, we have a result, yes, no rain. And can this still change? Yeah, it can still rain, right? So, hopefully that helps. I think this is a much better way of thinking about this thing. In my experience with my students, it works a lot better for people. If they start thinking about it this way, it's a lot easier for them to understand what tense that they should use, in which cases. You don't have to remember a lot of things. You just have to remember this one idea, which is developing result. And if you have that developing result in a situation, you should use the perfect. If you don't have a developing result in a situation, it's wrong to use the perfect.